accomplishments. There simply is no other way. Because to look for the unrecognized genius is like to look for the invisible man. There must be some visible signs that somebody can detect. And I think your task here today is to first, as our questions here point out, to define what kind of genius you're looking for. Because there's multiplicity of geniuses. Psychologists talk now not just of the kind of scholastic intelligence that Thurman and Binet and others measured, but emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence makes for good politicians. It makes for good people who make changes in society. There are different sorts of accomplishments and different sorts of genius. Which dimension in this multidimensional space of talents, which do you think might be more useful to humanity? To my mind, it depends on case by case, who did what in the world and what the results were. And then the question becomes, how do you recognize it? And for prizes of this sort, as you know, the prestige of the Nobel Prize, where does it come from? First of all, the amount of money that was given for it, let's be frank. Huge amount of money which had never been done before. But there are other prizes in the world which are just as prestigious, and what do they rest on? The reputation of the committees that selected the candidates, and the accomplishments, and the recognized qualities among experts and those who really know, who were able to pick them and find them. And I think here, what you have is laying the foundation of an edifice, which I hope, as Mr. Youssef was yesterday talking about building an edifice from the ground on up. You, ladies and gentlemen, now have to lay the foundation as to what the concept, how it could materialize, and how it could be brought to life. With this, I open the floor. If you would maybe raise your cards in turn, you will do that. Oh, wonderful. Great technology. Great technology. Right on. The floor is yours.
I think, thank you very much. You are right. We need to talk more not about the genius. We need to discuss the committee. How we can find the critical committee to discuss and to find the criteria for the genius.
Right. Can I have a floor? Can I have a floor? Let me just remind you, I spent a lot of my time, professional time, investigating what Tesla did and how he became a genius. The most what I was astonished is that he was immigrant in the States, but he had friends, very recognized people. One of his friends was Mark Twain. Mark Twain wrote a novel on the Tesla. He wrote a novel on the alien who came to Ica and connected alien with the Tesla. That's very well-known novel of Mark Twain. So that's how Mark Twain recognized genius coming from outside the planet. Personally, it is very difficult for people who are not genius to recognize genius. I'm not genius. I don't know how to recognize it. And the next problem is, are you going to recognize someone who is going to have a genius idea, or are you going to appreciate someone who has already done something genius? So there are many questions. I think it is a bit tricky to use this for this prize.
So I think that you would like to maybe stop for a moment and to think about the definition of the type of person that we're looking for. Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill has requested.
Thank you. I just wanted to offer 2 or 3 thoughts very quickly. I think it's very slippery also to think about whether an individual intended to help society or in fact help society. And it's quite typical, especially of inventors, because remaining in the scientific realm, technical realm, that helping society is not much of a motivation for them. Solving a problem, doing something fun, interesting, exciting, different, new, is motivation for them. So separating accomplishment and motivation strikes me as a very important theme that we should think about. Second theme is, are the people who are to be recognized living or dead? I believe, and I've been a student of the Nobel Prizes, that one of the things that makes the Nobel Prize work is that it's only awarded to living people. And that means that when the prize is awarded, there is 1 or 2 or 3 people, no more than 3, who are in the press, always excited pictures of them with their families, their colleagues, a bottle of champagne, elation on their faces. Ordinary people see this in the newspapers and recognize something very exciting has happened. If you give a prize to a dead person, it's rare that they will have champagne available to them. And no one cares about the emotional content of the recognition. So if the idea is to raise the visibility of contribution by exceptional people, they probably should be living people. And the third thing I would just want to at least hypothesize, that in our modern society, with the internet, with all the social media and the instant recognition of activity around the globe, there probably aren't any more unrecognized, truly contributing geniuses. So the category, unrecognized genius who have made a major contribution, might be an empty set in the 21st century. And it's something I think we have to think about, whether the rules would end up eliminating all possible candidates.
Thank you. We have Mr. Latagan next.
Thank you. I want to continue this discussion by making perhaps a meta-observation. And the discussion so far has already illustrated that there will always be a need for the interpretation for whatever rules and categories we set. You demonstrated yourself. And if you look at the history of the big prize, like the Nobel Prize, you see that every decade has given a new interpretation to those categories. So what we are looking for is a framework that will endure the time. And it has to do 2 things: to give direction, but also to give traction. The traction is to confine at least the parameters in which to operate. It becomes difficult if you say there are no limits. That was your expression. And how do you limit that? So I think the genius concept allows sufficiently for this kind of discussion to reinvent that as we go along. And I don't think that is unwise. The question of unrecognized is perhaps more problematic, because then it is a question, is it somebody who's already had the prize, etc., so that might be a more difficult one. But I think we will not escape the need to constantly reinterpret whatever categories we agree. It should be generic enough to survive this decade and the next decade. Otherwise, we are going to constrict the committee in such a way that it will not be able to operate. And we will have to trust the committee to have some judgment. So I think that's all what we can hope for, is a framework that gives freedom for interpretation, but also guidance in the direction we would like to go.
Thank you. So we have the framework that is for guidance and allows latitude on a case-by-case to look at individual candidacies. I think typically that is the sort of thing that most prize-giving organizations strive for. It is very seldom that you have a clear one-way path. Mr. Georgi Shepfin is next.
Thank you very much. I too would like to address the recognition problem. It seems to me that for some people we have to recognize, have to understand that the definition of genius is a collective property. It derives out of the collectivity that actually comes to say this person is a genius. So it's a product of a context. Now, Madam Chair, you mentioned music. It seems to me that if you take a look let's say at the beginning of the 19th century. I imagine most people around this table would agree that Beethoven was the genius of that particular period. In his own time, he was probably seen as second to Spohr. Who has ever heard of Spohr? Well, I have, but I don't know much of his music. So in other words, it's subsequent, it's posterity that defines genius in certain circumstances. Or I come from the social sciences, I'm not that good on the natural sciences, but it seems to me, if you look at the Nobel Prizes for Literature, we also see a cemetery of writers who nobody reads, which means that those who chose the writers at that time really had no criteria for assessing what genius is. So I think we should be quite careful with the recognition problem. I think this also suggests, contrary to what my distinguished neighbour was saying, is that actually there are unrecognized geniuses because it's posterity that recognizes genius and not us. I'm sorry to that sounds defeatist.
Madam Margaret Kennedy, please. I would like to address the question of unrecognized, and I feel that there are some fields where unrecognized will be difficult. For instance, in physics, or where you need these huge machines to, to prove certain points, like what we have just had recently with this new discovery of an atomic particle. And there are other fields where you don't need this kind of backing from your field. And when I look at medicine or education or economics or architecture or whatever, there are people who are usually not recognized outside the field, and they have big problems being recognized by their field because they put everything in question. That field holds dear and very high. And therefore, I think we need to, we talked last night, but Mr. Lategan was at the same table. We talked about this question of, do we need in the first years a genius that is recognized to establish the price, or could we actually afford to have, to sort of transcend the professional opinion about somebody for a certain amount of understanding what he was all about. So my plaidoyer is that we need to distinguish between different fields looking for genius. Thank you. Let me summarize very briefly. We're seeing now two tendencies in the debate about the definition, the role of actual recognition by peers or generally by society, and the possibility of discovering excellence or genius apart from these criteria. Mr. Vasilov Nicolescu is next.
Yeah, in my opinion, there is a third way between what we discussed here, between the unrecognized genius and the recognized accomplishment. Unrecognized genius, in my opinion, is impossible to do that. For recognized accomplishment, there are a lot of things. There are a lot of prizes. Why to make one more? So it must be something else. What something else? In my opinion, must be on the edge of accomplishment. Not yet real accomplishment, but something which has the germs of a various accomplishment. Can be science, hard science, can be soft science, can be in theology, can be in philosophy, can be in sociology, in poetry. Okay. One. So on the edge, what I mean? I think one way, it's not the only way, is a PhD. In other words, people who are not yet accomplished persons, but he showed an incredible new way of looking for what we can recognize as potential. Second point, in this difficult way, would be the commission of selection. It's like oxymoron. It's very difficult to deal with a commission for this kind of new way of recognizing people. So I think, I'll say triviality, but which is important, must be independent people. Independent of governments, independent of institutions, independent of collectivities who push some people and not other people. Very difficult. Second, has to be, in my opinion, from all fields of knowledge. Commission has to cover all fields of knowledge, with people, of course, who have real accomplishment, but not institutional, real intellectual and spiritual accomplishment. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. I think you brought in an element here to remind us that the breadth of the commission is going to be crucial to the success of the selection process, because if you have lacunae, if you have areas that are not represented in the commission, they will obviously miss the candidates that would answer to that. Mr. Francis Newton is next.
To my opinion, genius is not a good way to define the prize, because genius is an inner quality. To my opinion, what we want to recognize is what we bring to the humanity, to the earth. And every human has a small part of genius in itself. So I think we need to focus on what we want to recognize. And I propose to find a list of verbs like to invent, to care, to sing, to value, to share, to read, some words that would define the real accomplishment. And I think it's difficult to define the prize and also the way we are going to select people. If we want to select people who are not recognized by media, because today media or jet set is achievement is important for Nobel Prize, but everybody knows that the people who back this, the candidates is also so important. So I think we need to think over the way using the multitude, the number. Because if we want to select people who are different, we need to have a lot of different kind of people who are thinking over, I want to back this kind of achievement. And so to make confidence to the number to select, to propose, and after a committee with very well-known people recognized for their achievement in different parts to select them. So I think to conclude that it will be very important to select the quality, the type of achievement we want to recognize. Not only knowledge, philosophers, and so forth, not only peace. Model Nobel Prize is a good spectrum, but there's other quality, other achievements that are not recognized by Nobel Prize. And after, obviously, we could find one person who has an achievement in every category. But I think the spectrum of achievement is important to define.
I simply note that from Mr. Newton that duplicating what the Nobel Prize does is maybe not the best way. The contribution would be by looking to other fields. And he's also noted the need for a hierarchical system so that the greatest number of candidates could be looked through. This is the case with many great prizes that you may have participated, that there are several levels of selection in the process. Mr. Sigridis is next.
I would like to offer a couple of thoughts on the issue of unrecognized. I think that the award has a risk, right? And if we decide something that is unrecognized and then that in the end becomes not recognized ever, there is a risk to the award. So I perceive it more as a lifetime achievement award. So essentially, we need to figure out a person who has been unrecognized for several years, maybe decades, but later what became recognized. I think that's what makes it an unrecognized genius, but in the past. That has been currently already someone who has been recognized by their peers. Now, some thoughts in terms of, I fully agree that the committee should be coming from a very wide, the widest possible breadth of people, and I definitely agree that we can have steps, essentially a selection committee, a jury committee, etc. But I think that the award itself needs to focus in certain areas of effort, of concentration, that we can say actually, that otherwise it becomes huge. When could it be music and poetry and at the same time engineering? I think my suggestion is that we need to focus on areas where you have essentially a large benefit to humanity. And that is something that is tangible. So, but this is for discussion.
Right, the idea of the lifetime achievement, I think, is one of the sort of tangible criteria that can be, that we can hang on to. And of course, I think we could name any number of people who began to be recognized towards the end of their careers as an effect for huge contributions that have not been recognized earlier, and possibly sometimes the recognition came too late and the prize that would step in at that point, I think could be quite valuable. Senor Fonamaho.
Thank you. Listen, my intervention will be on the line of the last three ones, and I will try to summarize. I'm wondering, number one, I'm wondering, we are looking somebody to recognize or he or she did, or she or he is trying to do, or she or he is doing, of what she or he can do. That's a completely different panorama, and I think that that's too simple to formulate like this, but in my opinion, it's difficult to create something new if we don't move a little from what is the novel. And the novel is what he ate. That's my first question. And my second question in the same line, we are trying to give a prize based on scientific capability or intellectual capability, or not really related only with the intellectual and scientific capability, but on visions, wishes, motivations, let's say, aim to help the humanity, and you can help the humanity from a lot of different areas, not necessarily only from the intellectual area. So I think that that gives a framework on something somebody who can do, who is starting to do, who is doing or who did, and from which area, separating, in my opinion, intellectual area and scientific area from other areas. That can give us perhaps a way to advance in that definition of greatness. And I know that there are much difficulties in one, according to the answer to these questions, the difficulty will be bigger, but I think we should afford this.
Thank you. Mr. Kim Yong-lam.
My comment is, I think, I look at various awards being given, and then the one which is quite relevant is the MacArthur Fellowship Genius Grant. And that grant specifically said that it should not be based on past accomplishment, even though it will be taken into consideration. My sense is that the selection panel is key to the selection of the winner, especially for the first few years. And then when you have nominees from the hard sciences, the social sciences, and humanities being considered, it becomes very difficult to see who should be the winner. I mean, for myself, an engineer, I may see somebody in the hard sciences as making a significant contribution, deserving of the award. But if you are in the social science, I'm not very sure I can be a good judge. So my comment is that it should not be based on lifetime achievement. Instead, it should be based on the person's originality, insight, and potential for use by society or society.
I think you have now introduced a contradictory idea to the one we heard before, right? We had one proposal for lifetime achievement, looking back on what has been done. You were looking to potential. May I point out, for instance, that the European Research Council, or recent third, has two levels of awards that it gives. To people on the basis, young people on the basis of a project that they describe, and it is the project and the idea that is evaluated, and that is you're investing you're putting your money on the dark horse, you see. You hope that the project truly corresponds, that it's realizable, and so on. And there's an element of uncertainty in it. With the lifetime achievement, it's, of course, it's a matter again, only the peers can truly evaluate. I quite agree with you. Mr. Raoul Weiler.
Thank you. Located. I just bring in an information which has not been mentioned up to now, is that there exists an organization contributing in alternative global trust. It's an organization funded by Jacobson Hochschul, if I pronounce it exactly, from Sweden, I think. So that institution, as far as I know, is honoring people which have not been, or who have not been recognized, or have not been accepted within certain systems. So I think when we define the way to do that is that we should look to their definitions that we don't repeat. That's just a first comment on that. Second is, I would, as to criteria, we all, if I may say so, are prisoner of one or several systems. So we see that in UN systems, financial systems, etc. So, I mean, prisoner in the thinking, in the stream of thinking, the process. So I wonder that as a criterion that to recognize or identify people which work effectively contribute to humanity, but outside of the system. There are philanthropic people working for poor, etc., well known. Maybe they're not genius, I don't know. Perhaps they are weird. But anyway, I would there focus on the system identification. And third, although I have no right to express that, but still as an intellectual, we live in a patriarchal system, culture. Should we not, with this type of recognition, focus to women condition? I think that these are certain parts on Earth that humanity has quite a lot to gain by trying to repositioning in our cultural perception of the place of women. So, but I feel somewhat uneasy, but likely for women, so there are women here